Welcome back. The nonprofit Feeding America released a study that provides a snapshot of the state of food assistance all around the country. What it reveals about Georgia may surprise you. Having plenty to eat shouldn't be a burden, yet for nearly 750,000 Georgians, it is. Listen to these statistics. Nearly 20% of Georgia residents are food insecure. 30% of the state's children live in food insecure households. Of those visiting food banks, 56% report monthly incomes of less than $1,000, and most struggle monthly with having to choose between paying for food or for other necessities like utilities, medicine, and transportation. The Atlanta Community Food Bank serves 29 counties in Metro Atlanta. It was founded by Bill Bolling, a man who's every bit as passionate about feeding the area's needy as he was 40 years ago. His story is the subject of today's Executive Profiles.
So let's go back to Denton, North Carolina. Let's talk specifically about Ben Carroll.
Ben Carroll was the first food banker I ever knew. My grandfather. My father died when I was very early in life, and we moved back from the big city of Winston-Salem to Denton, small community. And to my grandfather's credit, he sold his sawmill and became the manager of this little town. So he was 10 feet tall to me, and I was his sidekick, and he was the fireman and the dog catcher and the policeman, and took care of the community.
And he taught you about giving back.
He taught me everything I know.
So you get this crazy idea coming out of high school that you wanted to join the Air Force and you want to go to Vietnam?
Well, that's, you know, you come from a small town, that's what you did. You joined the service and you volunteered to fight for your country. I was proud to do it.
You went early. I mean,
well,
you got back
early.
In '69.
Can you imagine a mother to sign her son away at 17?
So then you come back and you go off to school.
You know, I was the first one in my family to go to college, and I went on the GI Bill and graduated, and then worked a couple of years and came to Georgia to graduate school. Now, when you're from North Carolina, a small town, they never forgive you for coming to Atlanta and not coming back home.
Right.
But I found my home here, and I would say I found my purpose.
You did indeed. I know that when you got here, you started pitching in very early.
You know, we have a saying at the food bank, we're overwhelmed with opportunity, and that's what I found on the streets of Atlanta in 1975. Atlanta was a very poor city. My wife and I bought a house on 10th and Myrtle for $30,000, and the guy hugged my neck for taking it off his hands. It was a rough area town.
Sure.
But I started at St. Luke's Episcopal Church. They were happy to have me, and I had a whole community of people behind me.
You had the big idea, and you made it work. First food bank in the South.
I thought that I had thought up food banking, and then I read about it in a magazine one day. They were about 3 months ahead of me. There were maybe 10 of us in the country. I would say it was an idea whose time had come. And it really approached two different issues. How do we deal with waste, and how do we take unmarketable product and get it to those in need? So it really was a win-win.
How difficult was it to start a food bank in Atlanta at that time?
I knew from running a community kitchen, and we were feeding hundreds of people, that there was plenty of food out there. What I didn't know is the logistics and the legalities of how you handled that. You know, funny story, the big grocery back in the 70s was Big Star. And that was a family-owned grocer back then, the Alterman family. And I can still remember going over there just being on fire with the idea of, you should give me food, I'm helping the needy. They kind of laughed at me and said, you know, we have a different economic model over here, Bill. We sell our food. I thought, well, I know, but I think I can help you. And, you know, they really taught me right away that I had to go in with a business proposition. I had to go in with a win-win.
So we're 40 years down the road. Give us a sense of where you were when you started and how big this operation is today.
My first year, I distributed less than 50,000 pounds. I had 3 staff people. I didn't pay myself for the first 2 years. I had enough money to pay them. Today, we're a $100 million company. I have 150 full-time staff. We use over 20,000 volunteers a year. We're going to distribute over 60 million pounds of food to over 650 community-based organizations. And the genius of the food bank was to centralize the acquisition so that I could talk to a Kraft Foods or a General Foods or Kroger or Publix. I could talk to them as a business person to deal with their issues. But we decentralized the distribution, and that's really the key. Transformation happens when one person listens to another person's story.
Talk about beyond the Georgia border and the impact that you've had.
I was a part of the original group that created Second Harvest, the national network, which today is known as Feeding America. Together we'll distribute over 5 billion pounds of food. I've also been very involved in starting food banks, not only here in Georgia, but throughout the Southeast. We're in over 35 countries now. That's not my primary job, but we're happy to share the model because the model will basically work anywhere.
So it's 40 years later. Where do we go from here? What do you see next?
You know, for myself, I'm going to be leaving the food bank this year after 36 years. Certainly not retiring. I feel like I'm just getting warmed up. I have a huge network, what you might call social capital. So for me, it really is, how am I going to use that social capital? That I feel like I have a call to create a table for people to be connected and do things together. Another thing that's kind of the next iteration around food banking is to really move more into nutrition and health. Because if you look at people on limited income, they have the worst health outcomes. So we're starting to work with insurance companies and hospitals and healthcare providers. I've also created a new organization called Food Well Alliance, where we're going to work with over 300 community gardens. We have over 87 urban farms. The other thing that I hope to do is try to reframe how we talk about these things. Because in the political environment, it's a win-lose. And in the political environment, the conversation is usually who deserves to eat. Well, I just believe everybody deserves to eat.
The community appears to be behind Bolling's vision. Last year, more than 1,300 food drives were conducted for the Atlanta Community Food Bank. They brought in nearly 2 million pounds of food and raised $460,000 for Metro Atlanta's struggling families.